My stepdaughter ignored me at her wedding and replaced me with her biological father, but when it came time to pay, I was no longer there. I've been married to my wife, Sarah, for over 20 years. When we met, she was a single mother raising her 5-year-old daughter, Emma. Emma was a curious girl with bright eyes and an infectious laugh that could light up a room. The first time I saw her, she was running through the park, chasing a paper airplane, tightly holding Sarah's hand. In that moment, I suddenly felt that they were my future. From the start, Sarah was open about her past. Emma's biological father, Mark, was always unreliable, making empty promises and showing up only sporadically. He might call on her birthday, drop off a cheap gift, and then disappear again. Each time he appeared, Emma was genuinely happy, though Sarah tried not to let her get her hopes up. When my relationship with Sarah became serious, she made it clear that Emma would always come first for her. I accepted that without hesitation, but I couldn't have imagined how deeply I'd come to love her. It didn't happen overnight, but over time, every "I love you, Daddy," and every childish drawing with my name misspelled won over my heart. I was there when she learned to ride a bike after countless falls and scraped knees. I held her in my arms when she had a high fever in the middle of the night while Sarah searched for the thermometer. I helped her memorize a poem for her first school performance. On the day of the performance, trembling backstage, she sought my gaze in the audience to make sure I was there. And I always was. Mark, meanwhile, remained a background figure. He made grand promises. "Next summer, we'll go to the beach," or "I'll buy you a bike," but never followed through. Emma always cried when his words fell through, and each time I comforted her. I didn't want her to be disappointed in her father because of me. As she grew older, my bond with Emma only strengthened. I attended parent-teacher meetings, helped her pick out a prom dress, and cheered for her at sports events. She called me Dad. And though I wasn't her biological father, I knew she meant it sincerely. That's why what happened next broke my heart. When Emma went to college, I supported her without hesitation. I paid for most of her tuition, textbooks, and even the rent for her small apartment. It was a significant financial burden, but I had no regrets. I wanted her to have opportunities I never had. Mark, as always, remained inconsistent. He'd occasionally call to say, "Your dad is proud of you," but never contributed financially or took an active role in her life. When Emma graduated college, she ran to me right after the ceremony, tears in her eyes. "Thank you, Dad, for everything. I couldn't have done it without you." In that moment, I knew all my sacrifices were worth it. So when she announced her engagement to Andrew, I was genuinely happy. I pictured myself walking her down the aisle, a symbolic moment reflecting everything we'd been through together. I never said it out loud, but I assumed that honor was mine, since I'd been there for every major milestone in her life. The weeks leading up to the wedding were filled with excitement. Emma talked about her dress, the flowers, the music. As always, I supported her, paying for part of the reception, helping with the dress, and covering some extra expenses. I didn't expect anything in return except acknowledgement of my significant role in her life. But then the invitation arrived. I opened it with a smile, expecting to see my name in a special place. Instead, it was just a formal guest list. My name wasn't highlighted in any meaningful way. Worse, Emma had chosen Mark to walk her down the aisle. At first, I thought it was a mistake, but when I asked her about it, her response hit me like a punch to the gut. "I only have one biological father. I always dreamed of giving him this moment." I can't describe what I felt then. Years of love, sacrifice, and care were erased, as if they meant nothing. But the most painful part wasn't even her choice. It was how easily she said it, as if it never even occurred to her to choose me. Her wedding day became one of the most humiliating days of my life. I arrived early, wearing a suit tailored for the occasion. I sat among the guests and silently watched as Mark walked Emma down the aisle, all eyes on them. During the toasts, I waited, hoping someone would mention me, but no one said a word about me. I was invisible. Something broke inside me that day. The part of me that was always ready to sacrifice for others just shut down. I didn't know it yet, but that moment marked the beginning of changes that would alter everything. The image of Emma walking arm in arm with Mark is seared into my memory. She looked radiant, as a bride should. But I watched her not with joy but with bitterness. Not because I didn't want her happiness, but because in that moment I realized, to her, I was replaceable. A week after the wedding, Emma and Andrew flew off for an expensive honeymoon, a luxurious ocean-front resort with stunning views and top-notch service. I didn't ask questions. It hurt too much to talk about anything that had finally shattered our relationship, but I didn't expect what would happen after they returned. Emma hadn't even unpacked her bags when she called me. Her voice was light, as if nothing had happened. She gushed about the beaches, the romantic dinner under the stars that Andrew had arranged. I stayed quiet, responding with short phrases, trying to keep myself together. Then the conversation took a predictable but still unpleasant turn. "Dad," she said. That word, which used to warm my heart, now cut like a knife. "I need a small favor." It turned out they'd had unexpected expenses on their honeymoon and now couldn't cover their costs. She asked if I could help pay for their overspending. For a moment, I was speechless. I wasn't shocked so much by her request for money as by how effortlessly she asked. As if it was a given that I'd agree. As always, I was the one who fixed her problems. The one who provided, sacrificed, and never asked questions. But this time, something inside me resisted. Maybe it was wounded pride. Maybe the weight of all those years of being overlooked. But I realized one thing. For the first time, I didn't feel obligated to say yes. "I'm sorry, Emma," I said, trying to keep my voice steady though my heart was pounding. "I can't help this time." There was a pause. I could imagine her face, full of confusion. "But you've always helped," she finally whispered, disbelief in her voice. I took a deep breath. "Maybe you should ask Mark? He's your real father, right? Maybe he can help." Another silence. Then a quiet, "I understand." And she hung up. No arguments, no resentment, just a sharp end that left an emptiness in my soul. Later, Sarah approached me, furious. "How could you be so cruel?" she said. "You can't just abandon Emma when she needs help." I responded calmly. "It's not about the money, Sarah. It's about respect. I was there for 20 years, and when the time came to acknowledge that, she acted like it wasn't enough. I can't be a backup option she turns to only when it's convenient for her." Sarah didn't understand. To her, blood always mattered most, even if that blood was made of empty promises. We fell silent, but something between us had changed. An invisible wall went up between us, one that hadn't been there before. Emma didn't reach out to me again. Later, Sarah told me Andrew was angry at me for leaving Emma in a tough spot. As it turned out, Mark had disappeared again. No calls, no messages, nothing. I think Emma finally saw the truth. But that didn't undo what she'd done, and it didn't change how I felt. That night, sitting alone in the living room, I mentally replayed every moment I'd been there for Emma. I remembered her smile every time she called me Dad. And then I realized something. I'd always believed that title was a choice, that she called me Dad not just out of habit, but because I'd earned my place in her life. But now I wondered, was it just a convenient word for her? Did she only say it when it suited her? I don't know if I'll ever get over this, but one thing I knew for sure. This time, I wouldn't be the one who kept giving, because I had nothing left to give. 3 months had passed since the wedding. Despite my efforts to distance myself from the whole situation, it kept finding me. Sarah constantly tried to mend things between me and Emma. She looked at me with a mix of disappointment and pleading in her eyes, as if waiting for me to give in and become the person who never says no again. But she didn't understand, or refused to understand, that something inside me had changed that day. I couldn't just go back to how things were. After that phone call, when I refused to pay for the honeymoon, my relationship with Emma completely faded. At first, it hurt, but now it was a relief. No more casual calls that always led to requests for money. But what really surprised me was how quickly problems started in her marriage. Sarah, of course, stayed in constant contact with Emma and casually mentioned over dinner one night, "Emma and Andrew are having financial troubles." She sighed heavily. "Andrew lost his job and now they can't pay rent." I continued eating calmly, fully aware of where this conversation was headed. "I think we should help them," Sarah insisted. "After all, she's our daughter." I set down my fork, took a deep breath, and replied calmly, "I'm not her father anymore, Sarah. According to Emma, that role belongs to Mark. So, if she needs help, she should ask him." Sarah looked at me as if I'd just said something monstrous. "How can you be so cold?" she whispered. "She's always relied on you. You can't turn your back on her now." I chuckled. "Cold?" I repeated. "Cold is when you erase someone from your life at the very moment you should have acknowledged them. That's how I felt at her wedding. Cold and invisible. Like the 20 years I spent by her side never existed." "If Mark is her father in the happy moments," I continued, "let him be her father in the tough ones too." That ended the conversation. Sarah abruptly stood, grabbed her plate, and left in silence. That night, we went to bed facing away from each other. It hurt to realize how this was affecting our marriage. But I couldn't keep being the person who only gives without getting anything in return. A week later, Emma reached out again. Not directly, though. Andrew messaged me. The text was short but laced with desperation. "Hey, this is Andrew, Emma's husband. We need to talk. It's important. Do you have time?" I didn't reply right away. I left the message unread, a reminder of how much had changed. I reread it over and over, knowing exactly what it would be about. Money. It was always about money. Eventually, I decided to meet him. I had nothing to lose. We met at a local cafe. Andrew was already there, nervously tapping his foot and staring at an untouched cup of coffee. I sat across from him silently, letting him speak first. "Thanks for coming," he finally said, but there was no sincerity in his voice. It sounded more like forced politeness. "I know things are tense between you and Emma, but we're going through a rough patch, and we thought you might be able to help." There it was, the inevitable request. I kept my expression neutral. "What do you need?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Andrew sighed, looking down at his coffee as if hoping to find the right words in it. "We're having money troubles after the honeymoon. I recently lost my job and now we're behind on rent. If we don't pay in 2 weeks, we'll be evicted." I nodded, letting his words sink in. Then I asked the one question he clearly wasn't expecting. "Have you asked Mark?" Andrew looked up at me confused. "Mark?" "No, we haven't talked to him. Emma thought, well, that you might help. You've always been there." I let out a bitter, ironic chuckle. "Exactly," I said, leaning forward. "And yet, when she had a choice, she picked Mark." I leaned back, looked at him, and said calmly, So no, Andrew, I won't help this time. Maybe it's time for Mark to finally step up? Andrew tried to argue, saying their eviction would be unfair, that it wasn't just about Emma, but about him too. I raised a hand to stop him. This conversation is over, I said firmly. I wish you both the best, but I can't fix your problems anymore. I stood and left him alone with his cold coffee and frustration. When I got home, Sarah was waiting for me, as if she already knew what had happened. I didn't go into details. She didn't need them. She already understood that I'd refused to help. Emma and Andrew didn't try to contact me again after that. Sarah was still upset, but at least she stopped pressuring me. But something told me this wasn't the end. When a castle crumbles, it always leaves rubble behind. 6 months had passed since the wedding. Honestly, those months were surprisingly liberating. I stood firm in my decision not to get involved in Emma and Andrew's problems, even though it meant dealing with Sarah's constant disapproval. She didn't say it outright, but I could see it in her eyes. She still hadn't forgiven me for what she saw as a betrayal. No matter how many times I explained that it wasn't about the money but about respect, she either didn't understand or refused to. But the distance between me and Emma brought unexpected relief. For the first time in years, I felt free from the burden of responsibility I'd always carried, and I started focusing on myself again. I returned to old hobbies, like woodworking. I spent more time with friends. Things I'd long forgotten became important to me again. At first, I felt guilty for allowing myself this space. But now, I see it was necessary. However, the drama wasn't over. A few weeks ago, Sarah told me that Emma and Andrew had been evicted. They couldn't come up with the money, and their landlord's patience ran out. Now they were living with Andrew's mother in a cramped apartment, barely big enough for two, let alone a married couple. Sarah was furious. "This wouldn't have happened if you'd helped them," she said. Her voice carried that familiar accusing tone. I didn't respond. It didn't matter what I said. To Sarah, I'd always be the villain if something went wrong in Emma's life. But what she doesn't realize is that deep down, I know I did the right thing. Emma chose to distance herself from me, and now she was facing the consequences of her decisions. The irony, according to Sarah, was that Mark had been completely absent this whole time. When Emma reached out to him for help, he didn't even respond. That wasn't surprising. He'd been like that her whole life. But I couldn't help but wonder. After everything Emma did to put him on a pedestal, he wasn't there when she truly needed him. A few days ago, while Sarah was making dinner, she said something that nearly made me laugh out loud. "Emma says Mark promised to help her find new housing," she told me, "but he hasn't done anything yet. He says he's waiting for his finances to stabilize." I raised an eyebrow, looking at her in disbelief. "And Emma still believes him? After a lifetime of empty promises, she still trusts him?" I asked, not with malice, but with genuine curiosity. Sarah sighed and looked at me sadly. "He's her father," she said quietly, as if that explained everything. That conversation stuck with me. For years, I tried to fill the void Mark left in Emma's life. But now I wondered if it was all in vain. Maybe to her, the biological bond always meant more than actions. Maybe I was never really competing with Mark's presence, but with the sheer fact of his existence. A week ago, Emma reached out again. Surprisingly, it wasn't about money. She sent a message asking to meet. She said she wanted to talk. I hesitated for a long time before responding. But in the end, curiosity got the better of me. We met at the park where we used to go when she was little. Emma was already sitting on a bench, nervously fidgeting with her fingers. When I approached, she stood and gave me a hesitant hug. The embrace felt insincere, but I accepted it out of politeness. We sat in awkward silence for a few minutes. Then Emma spoke, but not about why she'd asked me here. Instead, she started talking about how hard it was living with Andrew's mother, the tension in her marriage, and how much she missed having her own home. I listened quietly. It was clear she needed to vent. Only then did she finally get to the point. "Dad," she said. Before, that word meant so much to me, but now it felt empty. "I know I let you down," she continued. "I know the wedding hurt you, and I guess I didn't fully realize how much until it was too late." I waited, letting her speak, a storm of emotions swirling inside me. Disbelief, sadness, and lingering resentment. Emma took a deep breath and added, "I just wanted to say I'm sorry for how things turned out. I never wanted you to feel left out. But you did make me feel that way," I replied, calmly but firmly. "And it's not just about the wedding, Emma. Every time you overlooked everything I did for you, every time you chose to see Mark as someone he never was. You say you didn't want me to feel replaced, but honestly, I don't think I ever truly held that place." Emma lowered her head. My words clearly stung her. Maybe she expected me to just accept her apology and go back to how things were. But that was impossible. Some things, once broken, can't be fixed. The conversation soon ended. As we parted, she said she hoped we could rebuild our relationship over time. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't want to, but because I wasn't sure it was possible. Emma didn't just break my heart. She shattered something bigger. My trust in her. Update. I did something Sarah and Emma will never forgive me for. And honestly, I'm not sure I should even ask for forgiveness. A year has passed since the wedding, and my relationship with Sarah has crumbled more than I ever could have imagined. What started as emotional distance turned into an insurmountable chasm. The love, the connection, even the respect. It's all gone. We still lived in the same house, but it was no longer a shared life. Since Emma's wedding, there'd been no intimacy between Sarah and me. At first I thought it was temporary, just stress. But as the months passed, I realized Sarah wasn't just upset. She was angry. She blamed me for Emma's struggles, and that anger seeped into every aspect of our marriage. We used to talk for hours, watch movies together. Now, our evenings passed in silence. Every time I tried to reach out, she pulled away. She was building a wall between us, and in that emptiness, someone else appeared. Sophie, Sarah's best friend. She'd always been around, the fun aunt to Emma who gave expensive gifts and told funny stories. But after the wedding, something shifted. She started calling more, checking on me. At first I thought she was just trying to help mend things between me and Sarah. But over time, I realized that wasn't it. Sophie was the only person who truly listened to me. She told me what no one else did, that I was right, that my feelings mattered, that I'd been treated unfairly, that Sarah wasn't being fair to me. Our conversations became something I looked forward to. In her eyes, I wasn't the villain of this story. I won't say it was planned. No, it just happened. Like a river finding a new course. One day, after another long conversation, we sat in silence, looking at each other. We'd talked about everything. How I felt invisible in my own home. How Sarah had grown cold. How my life was slowly falling apart. Suddenly, Sophie took my hand and said something that left me speechless. "You deserve to be happy, and they're not letting you have that." I don't know what made me lean in, her voice, her gaze, but the next moment, I was kissing her, and she didn't pull away. That night, I didn't go home. I spent hours with Sophie. We talked, laughed, and I finally let out the emotions I'd been holding back for months. For the first time in a long time, I felt seen. I felt wanted. But most importantly, I felt understood. I know what I'm doing is wrong, but I don't regret it. Sophie has become my refuge. She sees me for who I am. With her, I've found what I lost with Sarah. Connection. Sarah suspects something. She watches me closely when I come home late or step out to answer messages. But she hasn't said anything yet. Sophie feels guilty too. But neither of us regrets what happened. I know this can't go on forever. When Sarah finds out the truth, there'll be no going back. But for now, I don't feel so alone anymore. Final update. 2 years have passed. It all feels like a distant storm now, but the scars remain. I've managed to rebuild my life, but I'm not sure I'll ever repair the damage done. Sarah and Emma have completely cut me out of their lives, and in a way, that has set me free. When I finally confessed, Sarah's reaction was even stronger than I expected. She burst into the room, not even letting me speak. "What does this mean?" she shouted. "I've seen how you've changed. Tell me the truth." I blurted it out. "Sophie and I, we've been together. She was there when no one else was." Sarah's face twisted in shock, which quickly turned to rage, and then she said words that still haunt me. "So that's it? Everything we built meant nothing to you?" I froze, unable to answer. Everything I'd done was to preserve our family, but I'd failed. "Sarah," I started, my voice trembling. "While you were trying to save Emma, I lost myself, and you didn't even notice." She screamed so loudly it hurt to hear. "What you did is unforgivable. How could you destroy our family?" At that moment, Emma walked in. She already knew, her voice devoid of emotion, only icy contempt. "I thought you were better than this. But you never cared about us, did you? You just wanted to be the hero. And look what you've done." "That's not true," I whispered, barely breathing. "You pushed me away. You chose Mark, Emma. And when you needed something, I was just supposed to fix it. But when I gave you everything, it was never enough." "Was it enough?" Sarah screamed. "That doesn't justify your betrayal." She wasn't listening anymore. "Get out, and don't ever come looking for us." It hurt, but at the same time, I felt relief. There was nothing left to save. I moved into a small apartment. The divorce was exhausting, but the real pain wasn't in the legal proceedings. It was in realizing the life I'd built was gone. Through it all, Sophie was by my side. She became my support, my inspiration. She didn't excuse my mistakes, but she didn't judge me either. A few months later, as I started piecing my life back together, I got a message from Emma. "Dad, I know I hurt you. I know I let you down, but you'll always be my father. I'm sorry. I understand things can't go back to how they were, but I'll always love you." I didn't reply right away. The wounds were still too fresh. Maybe one day I'll find peace. But for now, I'm just moving forward, no matter what I've left behind.